It's my great pleasure to welcome our today's speaker for the session, Mr. Krishna Chaitanya. Mr. Krishna Chaitanya is a co-founder and Chief Information Security Officer for Cycops Information Security Services, focusing on information security services located in Hyderabad. Krishna Chaitanya has over 19 plus years of professional experience working as a security system architect, security engineer, consultant, and a senior manager technology services group. He has played a lead role in multiple security consulting projects for professional services clients across a variety of sectors, including penetration testing, security and network infrastructure design, vulnerability assessment, security policy design, post auditing, hardening certification, standards, and regulatory compliance. Implemented security architecture for 40 corporates from different verticals pharma, education, IT, infrastructure, PBO, KPO, etc. Successfully implemented tens of zero architecture for clients from various verticals. I welcome you, sir. I request you to please continue with the session. Thank you.
Good afternoon, ma'am. Before I start, I just would like to know where do we stand in terms of malware analysis, cybersecurity. Who is the best candidate out here who understands cybersecurity, especially in terms of malware? May I know, even before that, may I know your profiles once so that I can speak accordingly. Today I'm supposed to talk about malware analysis, maybe basic static, basic dynamic, and if time permits advanced static and advanced dynamic malware analysis. But before jumping onto that, I just want to know where we stand, especially in terms of understanding malware. What are our profiles? Where do we come from? What is our background? What do you teach? I know this is the second half session, especially after lunch. We feel bored, that too when we talk about theory. I would like to make it more practical and more interactive, but for that you need to interact.
Most of us are from CSC as well as electronics.
CSC as well as?
Electronics.
Electronics. So for the CSC guys, I assume you probably at this point of time might be talking about networking, operating systems and coding and stuff, right? So do you also talk about penetration testings in your course?
No.
Yes. If yes, what exactly you teach? Do you talk about remote code executions or the phases of hacking and so on? What exactly will be taught as a part of penetration testing in your courses?
So we basically teach basics of cybersecurity as well as when we talk about some certain tools, then the tools which are integrated with the paralinux will generally teach them or let students know with the working of those tools, as well as few concepts of cryptography. Cryptography, we have a subject in normal engineering also, not specific to cybersecurity. In normal computer science stream also we have cryptography subject. So we teach the cryptography and basics of internet networking we teach.
When you say basics of computer networking, can I assume you will be talking about Wireshocks, probably observing the packets at different layers. You would also be talking to them regarding the protocols, ports. So we are aware about protocols, port numbers and everything. I don't have to get into that depth. We are also aware about PIDs, process execution formats and other stuff. That's it. So I can straight away jump onto that topic instead of wasting time making you understand what is a port or how exactly it is uniquely identified or what is portable executable when it is related to any program that is getting executed on a mission. I just wanted to note that part. And regarding, I never usually use mouse or the tracker, so I'm a bit stuck over here. One of the famous news channel based out of Hyderabad, Telangana. They are using around 700 missions to get connected to the environment, and they've been hacked. In fact, it is of a ransomware attack. I assume most of us understand what a ransomware attack is all about. So what they have done is they have approached us to perform an incident response. Usually with an incident response, what we do is we would identify what exactly has gone wrong. We would make sure that whatever the malware or the issue that is affecting their environment is addressed, probably removed, stopped, or isolated, and then we will take it further. In this case, it is of a ransomware attack, and the client has approached us to make sure, because it is of a news channel, they wanted the application to be up and running, their servers to be up and running so that they can go live broadcast. Otherwise, the whole setup environment is stuck. And they have asked us to come up with an IR. We started working towards clearing off that particular ransomware and executing the system, making it up and running. But is that good enough for any cybersecurity professional? Just to remove, or probably let me put it in a simpler format, just to format the system and say you are good to go live, up and running. Or are we supposed to perform any additional tasks apart from simply removing that malware? In our technical terms, we call it as decontamination. Decontamination is where we manually remove virus or malware rather, and then we make sure that the system is up and running. So is that good enough? A 24-hour new channel organization with 4 buildings, 100. It is actually 700 systems throughout the state. Had us to clean and re-image the system. All done. We have removed most of the virus, and they are running the channel as of now. But is that good enough? No. Ultimately, whenever we talk about such kind of attacks, there is a stage for the people who might have been talking about Kali tools and other stuff. Probably you would also mentioned about the phases, different phases of hackers attack, right? There are 5 phases of hackers attacks. Usually, it starts off with information gathering. There are a number of information gathering mechanisms like public reconnaissance, open web reconnaissance, SNMP, SMTP reconnaissance, DNS, OVs, and lot more other methods through which you would be able to gather the information. Thank you. There is a very famous quote from Abraham Lincoln where he says, if you give me 10 hours to chop down a tree, I would spend around 8 hours to sharpen my axe. That is what even a hacker does. If at all he is targeting an organization to hack into, first thing what he does is he gathers as much as possible information that is available over internet. That's a phase 1. Phase 2 is scanning, where he knocks each and every door of the environment. When it comes to computer, we call it as the logical doors ports, which are around 65,535 in number. He knocks these doors, identifies the weak points, loopholes in those environments, and then gains access to the machine. To gain access into the machine, there are multiple ways. One common method what every other hacker would use is RCE, Remote Code Execution Vulnerability. Usually, even in our organization, we conduct a debate talking about which operating system, according to you, which operating system is more secure. Is that Windows or Linux or any other operating system? We vote for Linux. What is the purpose for that? Why do you say Linux is more secure?
Because the executable file, it is not supported to many general purpose executable files.
General purpose executable files. Probably what you mean to say, binaries. Okay. Any other reason?
Operating is also tough when compared with
Operating, because it is tough to operate, it is secure?
compared with Windows.
It's command based, because binaries non-reversible format of the program, what you mean to say. Then how do we execute programs in Linux? Don't we have binaries in Linux? We do have. Then it should be the same issue, right? And when you say because it is tough to use or probably to execute, or the most common answer I receive whenever we talk about Linux is people say it is open source. Because even if it is a malware, you would be able to read the source and understand it is malicious. Is that the reason? If that's the reason, the next question would be something like I would be asking, when is the last time you read the source code? Do we at least know where to download the source code of the operating system, Linux? No. then we cannot simply say it is secure because its source is open. Because we are nowhere going to read the source code of the application, whatever we are executing. For example, on your Kali Linux machine, if I ask you to install VLC player, obviously we go to some apt get repository or yum or rpm, download that, install it. We are not going to read the code. So if there is a malware in it, obviously we are also going to get infected. But the root thing when it comes to the security part is like how easy it is for a hacker to hack into the environment. Right? When was the last known remote code execution vulnerability on Windows operating system got published? When I say remote code execution vulnerability, it is a code which when run on the system, probably targeting your IP address or the network, without your interaction. You don't have to click anything, you don't have to say anything. If you are there on the network, I would be able to hack into your system. Without user interaction, if at all I am able to execute a code, let it be buffer overflow or any other heap overflow issue or any other stuff. If I am able to execute and take control of your system, then it is remote code execution. The last known remote code execution vulnerability on Windows operating system has been released on year 2018, 7 years back. Since last 7 years, there is no RCE, published RCE at least, that is available to the world, world wide web for exploitation. But even today we call Windows is more vulnerable. It is not more vulnerable, it is easy to hack because the number of users are high. There are more number of Windows users compared to Linux users. But how do I justify my statement saying like Linux is more vulnerable than Windows? To justify that, there are multiple resources. Maybe you could take down, unfortunately I didn't find time to prepare special notes for this session. If possible, after going back, I would send you documents for you to read it. But for now, maybe you could take down a domain. For all the guys who have been browsing Kali Linux, you might be aware of this. It is exploit-db.com or packetstormsecurity.com or .org, where most often recently known exploit codes would be published. And if you go and sort it out over there, of the 100, first 100 or first 1000, you will be able to see almost 500 to 600 of them are related to Linux environment, not on Windows environment. We have lots of applications, Apache or let it be Node.js or any application that runs on Linux, that's vulnerable. So just to give you a clarification on the statement, whatever I mentioned, there is no specific operating system, specific hardware, specific group of people that can be considered as more secure or that can be considered as less secure. To put the same question in a different format, if I ask you, give you a scenario, let us say in our organization, there are three groups of people. Group 1 is a security group. Do we have an IT team, IT security team within the organization? Not from the faculty group, but from the infrastructure management. We do have, right? So they probably would be using applications like your antivirus, EDRs, UTMs, Metasploit or Nessus kind of things to secure your environment. Then let us say there is a regular infrastructure management team who would be handling software installations or helping me to run applications like MS Office and so on. And then another group would be users who would be using all kinds of browser applications, MS Office. They would be working on multiple programs. So if I ask you a question, who among these three groups are can be considered as vulnerable? Any answers for this? Of the three groups, there is one group security, the other group is admin, and the other group is end user. Who might be vulnerable in this environment?
Security person will be more vulnerable level.
What might be the reason?
Because he knows the core vulnerability of that system.
He knows the vulnerability, but he can prevent it, right?
He can prevent it.
From again, technical perspective, all the three groups are equally vulnerable because we have vulnerabilities related to Nessus, Metasploit, Nmap, if at all you have worked out with these tools from Kali Linux. All this, if you go back to the same website, exploit-db.com and search for Nessus, you will be able to find out a couple of vulnerabilities related to Nessus. Say Nmap, again, vulnerabilities. It can be of SQL injection, authentication bypass, or any kind of vulnerability, but the applications are vulnerable. In the same manner, if you go and mention the tools that are used by your IT guys like MS Office, Acrobat Reader and other stuff, you will still be able to identify vulnerabilities. And the same thing happens even with the end user. Browsers are vulnerable, every other technology is vulnerable. So there is a very famous quote whenever it comes to cybersecurity. There are only two kinds of companies in the world. One who has been hacked and one who don't know yet that they have been hacked. So if you give me a chance to check your systems, verify your systems for malware, then I'm pretty much sure that I would be able to come up with at least 5-10 APTs or FUDs. Now that is what we are going to discuss in our session. What are these APTs? What are these FUDs? How do they act? How, as a user of that particular mission, how exactly I would be able to catch them? This is what we are actually supposed to do. But before that, we should understand different characteristics of different kinds of malware that are there in the market. So let us jump quickly into this part. From a definition perspective, I hope you are aware about session's topic name. We are discussing about malware analysis. There are 4 different types of malware analysis. One is like basic static, basic dynamic, advanced static and advanced dynamic. I don't think we have enough time or proper lab setup to go through all stages of malware analysis, especially from a demonstration perspective. But whatever that is possible, maybe basic static, basic dynamic, I will be demonstrating it on my environment. Okay. But before that, we just need to understand the definition, meaning from malware. What is malware? As per the slide, it is malicious software. What is malicious? What do you consider as malicious?
More vulnerable.
Vulnerable is different. That's where we, even with our regular classes, we specially have a session where we teach our candidates on alphabets of security. Where we say, from your, let me give you a simple example. What is attack according to you? How do you define attack? If you are comfortable in Telugu, you could also define it in Telugu.
System struck also on the
System?
struck. That means we can't do anything.
Yeah, if at all it is we are unable to run that particular program, BSOD,
We
please screen out there.
identify something happened.
No, let us keep the technology aside. If I ask you a simple meaning of attack in Telugu, how do you define it?
Transforming the information from meaningful to unmeaningful, like some sort of changes in the meaning of the message, meaning of the information, or adding noise to the information.
Adding noise to the information. Again, we are going back to the technology. That's the right point, but let us keep technology aside. Give me a general meaning for the term attack.
Which causes the disturbance.
Causes disturbance. So, okay, I'm doing a session and sometimes suddenly I see somebody sleeping in the class. Can I consider it as attack?
No.
He's causing disturbance to me. But that's not an attack, right? So probably that might not be the right definition. Sudden harm. Okay, let me do one thing.
To break the process.
Okay, can I throw this mic on any one of you? Try causing harm? I can try, right? I can throw this mic on you. When do you call it as an attack?
When it is intentional.
Intentional to cause harm. Okay, I'm not that perfect in playing cricket and so, and I miss hitting you with this mic. Will you still be calling it as an attack? Instead of throwing a cue, I threw it on camera. Or probably on this next stage. Will you still be calling it as an attack? For the guys who are especially into cybersecurity, teaching BNC and IT Act of India, make sure that you understand this very clearly. Attack is an attempt to cause harm. So as I was mentioning, intention. I have the intention to cause harm. I missed, but it is still an attack. And that's the same statement we also have from the law. Indian law, not just Indian law, every other law says attack is an attempt to cause harm. I might be successful, I might fail. That's the same thing happens even with hackers. I might try to break into this computer. Sometimes I will be successful because of the exploit. Sometimes I might fail. I might not be able to successfully hack into your computer. But still it is considered as an attack. That is what we capture when we do forensic investigation logs and show that his intention is to break into our environment. So that's how we usually talk about lots of other terminologies related to cybersecurity that includes vulnerability. But here we are not talking about vulnerability. For your information, because we are going to talk about malware, there are core terminologies you need to understand before we jump onto the actual session. One, you already understand attack. What is vulnerability? Weakness, right? That's the exact definition from regular English dictionary. But when it comes to technology, this time I would like to include technology. Earlier I was asking you to exclude technology. Let us include technology. What is a vulnerability when it comes to technology?
Which makes the attacker successful.
Sorry?
Which makes the attacker to get the success.
Vulnerability may be helping the attacker to be successful, but it is a weakness. That's the first part of the definition, which is understood, which is accepted. But where do we have this weakness, especially when it comes to technology? Where do we have these vulnerabilities? Where can you find these vulnerabilities?
Specifically in terms of networks, we find it in ports.
From networks, ports.
In terms of networks, we find it in the ports.
So can I match it to the protocol? Not all the ports. Just to give you an analogy, port is something like a door to your computer, door or window to your computer, through which people can enter. These are like logical doors. There are different kinds of doors. Here we have wooden door. I think that's an iron door, or probably a wooden door. Sometimes we might see a glass door, a wooden door, or a different format of the door. Hacker needs different instruments to cut those doors. If at all it is a wooden door, he comes up with an axe. If at all it is a glass door, he would come up with a diamond cutter. That is what he does in scanning. That second stage of second phase of hacking. What he does is he knocks each and every door, understands what is it made of, the protocol made of. When you say ports, there are two different kinds of protocols: plain text protocol and encrypted one. So if at all we are talking about encrypted, they are secure enough. But if at all it is of a plain text protocol like HTTP, FTP, SMTP, SNMP, Telnet, and also they are vulnerable. That is what a vulnerability exists in protocol. Not just on protocol, vulnerability exists on operating systems. All operating systems, including SCADA, the RTM operating systems that would be there on SCADA, they are vulnerable. Windows, Linux, and every other operating systems are vulnerable. Then vulnerabilities might exist in applications like MS Office, Acrobat Reader, Nessus, Nmap, and other applications. Vulnerability might exist in protocols, hardware devices. I was just talking to one of your other HOD who is primarily into OT technology, IoT. These are most number of vulnerabilities are found in hardware technologies, especially smart devices. So vulnerabilities does exist in smart devices, smart technology, Slackware, firmware, and every other places. So that is there. Vulnerabilities are there with protocols and also with human beings. So this is what we would usually be looking out for. So the terminology vulnerability is related to weakness. Exploiting is making use of that vulnerability. If I make use of that vulnerability, I exploit. Hackers use exploit code to exploit vulnerability to break in. A successful attack is known as break-in. So these are the common terms throughout the session I would be usually taking. But when I say something like break-in, what I mean to say is he successfully got into that environment. But malware has nothing to do with any of these terminologies. Malware is malicious software which does or causes some kind of harm to your environment or to your systems. Malware is of various kinds. We have different formats of malware. For example, the first kind of malware we usually talking about would be something related to virus. How many of us have been a victim of a virus? How many of us know at least one example of a virus? As I was mentioning earlier, there are only two kinds of computers in the world. One who has been hacked and one who don't know yet that they have been hacked. So of course if you say no, I haven't been a victim of a virus, don't worry. You might not be a victim, but virus has got a special category, characteristic. Virus is a malicious software that infects your system with user. So as I was mentioning, virus is a malware, one of the family member of the malware, which infects your system with user interaction. The term what you need to underline over here is user interaction. That means I can copy a virus, malicious program on my pen drive, copy it onto my D drive, C drive, store it anywhere. But if I am not executing that particular program, then I won't be getting infected with that. Even today in one of the practical sessions, I have a couple of viruses on my machine. But I'm sure that because there is no user interaction, it is not going to affect my particular system. Any examples of virus you might be aware of? The recent one that caused harm to computer systems. What's a recent issue we face when it comes to cybersecurity?
Millions of Microsoft systems.
BSVD. Because of the CrowdStrike. CrowdStrike is an antivirus EDR, endpoint detection and response. And because of the improper patch management functionality in the CrowdStrike, millions of the machines, Microsoft machines, crashed. It's not a virus. It is a improper patch management solution that most of the organizations has got. Clarity on the amount that got lost because of this issue? Almost $35 million. Downtime was around 2 to 3 days continuously, including airports, railway stations, every other organization was infected. Loss assumption was around 35 million USD. But what is the biggest virus what we have so far that created a huge loss to the industry, the technology industry totally? Who is the oldest computer user over here? How long you have been using computers? Personally, I have been using computers since 1994-95. When DOS 1.0, 2.0, I worked on all the DOS 1, 2, 3, then 95, 98 and so on. And who amongst you is the oldest computer user? The reason why I am asking you that question is, if at all you say, I started using computers somewhere between 99, 2000 and so on, then I am sure that you might have been a victim of one virus known as I love you. Ever heard about this virus I love you?
It was a KDS,
VBS file. Yeah. You have been a victim of it? Most of the industry, people who used to use internet back then in 1999, actually it started spreading somewhere in 2000, 2001. But people who might have been using computers back then, you would receive an email, a simple email which says I love you, not from some unknown person but from your known contact, and with an attachment, I love you.txt, with additional extension as .vbs. Probably you might be knowing VBS is a VB script, right? It is just a 430 lines of code. Guy who wrote that particular code is some student like them who is in the second year BTech, where the professor rejected his theory, saying like, sir, I will be able to come up with a program that can go from one system to another system without any protocol requirement, capture the contacts information and send automatically an email. His professor rejected it, saying like, yeah, this is not possible. And he wrote a mail, the code of 430 lines. The whole VBS program is of 434 lines. There, if at all you start analyzing, as a part of malware analysis, if you start analyzing the code, you will also be able to see that there are lots of mistakes. I hate going to college is one of the statement of the 434 lines. And instead of mentioning MAIL to send a mail to another account, he used MALE as a part of the code. So that amateur the developer was. But still, the loss that incurred because of this particular bomb, the virus, I love you virus, it's $10 billion. Even today, this is after 25 years, even today that is one of the biggest, or rather the biggest virus we have ever had, through which we had a loss. You might have heard about Configure or WannaCry. There are lots of ransomware attacks, malwares, worms and other things. But the loss incurred just because of this particular I love you virus is 100 times higher than the other malware whatever we have, including the recent BSVD of CrowdStrike, blue screen of death of CrowdStrike. What happens with I love you virus is like once it gets, there are multiple variants in the virus. The initial code what he has written is like it would only change the JPG file extension to some XYZ random name. So if you have any image on your system, that would be gone, you won't be able to open. But later down the time, people modified it. Hackers, because it is a simple VBS code, you could straight away open the code, make minor modifications. Code is being modified. Instead of looking out for JPG, this time it looks for EXE. And instead of changing the extension, what it does is it kills lsass.exe. I'll show you if at all you are aware about shell and other stuff of operating system, it kills that. Or it encrypts and then the whole system would be gone. So the loss, because you need to reinstall the operating system, you need to reset the whole environment, that is calculated based upon man hours. And the man hours are more than $10 billion in cost. What happened to him? The name of that guy is Bunchuman. He was never arrested. He was a Philippine guy. Back in 2001, there were no IT laws in Philippines, so he was not arrested. But he went to US to attend an DEF CON conference, hackers conference, where he's been arrested. He's been behind bars, but that's, a long story cut short. Virus is a malicious software. For example, if I have that VBA script with me, I store it in my computer, I'm not going to be infected until and unless I interact. When I say interact, it is something like you connect a pen drive, that is interaction of you with your computer. You execute a program, you download and run a program. So most probably user taking an action on a particular program is interaction. If there is no interaction, virus will not affect your system. So we will check with one of similar kind of virus today. Then we have worms. Ever heard about worms? Computer worms. And to give an example of virus, there are many SAS.exe, Sazzer, Blaster, MS Blaster and multiple things. But most of the viruses later down the time got converted into a worm. Worm again is a malicious program which infects your system, but this time without user interaction. All I need to be, let us say I got infected with a worm. MS Blaster is very well known worm. These days we have, what is that? Conflicker. Ever heard about this worm, Conflicker worm? Again, technical guys probably might have heard about it. What Conflicker does is it gets into your environment. It broadcasts a packet to the whole systems on your environment. If you are vulnerable, it hacks into your system, gains access of your environment, and then does nothing. It only stays in your computer. This is what a worm does on your system. For a worm to get executed or for you to be infected with a worm, all you need to be is a vulnerable system. If you are using a very vulnerable Windows 7, Windows 8, Windows 10 operating system, and one of your system, if at all they got infected with the worm on their home network, obviously it could also spread into the entire network. The very famous worms are MS Blaster, Sazzer, or the recent one, Configure or WannaCry. I'll give you a few examples. What MS Blaster does is, it looks out for exploitation code, MS0366 vulnerability on Windows operating system, hacks into that particular computer, drops a program by name msblaster.exe, and this particular msblaster.exe gets executed on October 14th, 2003. Only on specific date, specific time, this program would get executed, and what happens? They all try to get connected to update.microsoft.com. What happens if lakhs of computers get connected to one single server or couple of servers at a time? Denial of service attack. It is rather distributed denial of service. It is not even simple denial. That means Microsoft was unable to stop it. Back then there was no concept of CDN. It is again a distributed network. To put it in a simpler format, I am skipping that part. If you are interested, we will talk about it. Back then there was no concept of CDN, and all we had was load balancing clustered services, and the whole Microsoft has gone down just because of one small vulnerability in their environment. Then we have Configure, which uses MS0867 NetRP vulnerability, hacks into your system if you have 445. In fact, Bill Gates announced 25,000 USD for the guy who does malware analysis, not to identify the characters or the behavior of the program, only to identify the source country, not even the source IP. If you just say this got originated from Sweden or some Ukraine, that is enough. He is prepared for paying around 25,000 USD back then, when Configure was identified. Configure is a bomb, hacks into your computer based upon the vulnerability you have on your systems, without your knowledge, without your interaction. So worm is a malicious program which gets into your environment, takes control of your system, does whatever they want. Fortunately, for last couple of years, we don't have any kind of, apart from the WannaCry, which has been very well known, kind of ransomware attack, there are no major bombs identified. Then comes the Trojan. How many of us are aware of Troy story? Brad Pitt. Do you watch movies? At the Trojan horse, probably it is a non-detail topic for you. There is a war between Greece and Troy guys. Troy is an island. These guys fight. Greece was undefeatable kingdom, but they failed. And after all those things, they pretend as if they leave Troy by gifting a wooden horse, which is very. The prince of that particular Troy was, very fond of this kind of horses. So they pretend as if they gift this wooden horse. Inside that wooden horse, all the warriors of Greece guys, came, and then in the night they opened the doors and then they won the war. Long story cut short. Trojan horse is something which looks cool, nice, good looking stuff, but it runs malicious tasks. How many of you play video games? I'm just talking to the people. Probably Call of Duty or any other stuff, FIFA and other stuff, right? So the easy target for a hacker is to download a trial version of any software or probably a limited version, attach a malware to that. It is called binding. So I would be using binders. There are multiple applications available where we compress the program and share. And probably because I say this is cracked version, you need to disable your antivirus to have the full functionality of the game. I would ask you to disable antivirus and run the software, and people would do that because they wanted that game or probably application very much. And when they do that, when they disable the software and run, on the front end you would be able to see the good program, the regular game, the trial version. But in the background, he takes control of your operating system. Rather, I would say, he would be controlling the shell of your operating system. Any idea on what a shell is? No matter whatever we talk about, especially when it comes to hacking, ultimate aim or goal of a hacker is to gain remote shell. What is shell of Windows operating system?
Command and PowerShell.
Command and PowerShell 32-bit, but they are not actually. Back in 98, Windows used to have command prompt as the shell of the operating system when it was still running under 16-bit. But once it got converted to 32-bit and so on from 64-bit, they give you the same functionalities, like CMD and PowerShell give you the same functionalities of your shell, but not the shell. Explorer.exe is the shell of Windows operating system. But again, to put it in a simpler format, what is the purpose, functionality of a shell?
Interaction with the
Communicate with kernel.
Communicate with
Kernel.
kernel. It gives you an interaction. It acts as an interaction between user and the operating system, or to communicate with the kernel. So to run a program, to create a folder, because to put it in a simpler format, I can give you an analogy. Shell is something like a steering to your car. Will you be able to drive a car without a steering? No. Without a steering, you will not be able to drive. I will be able to drive the car. I can still give the ignition, probably if at all it is manual, change the gears, apply clutch or accelerator. I will still be able to drive. What I will be able to do? I will not be able to control. Shell is that control to your operating system. If you want to control your operating system, you need shell. And that is what Trojan does. When a malicious software gets installed on your system, hacker will have total control on your system. He will be able to disable your task manager, disable your command prompt, regulate it, change, or he could also use you as a proxy and do malicious stuff, especially for crypto mining. After hacking into your system, if at all you do not have any important data, then he uses your resources, your processor, your storage, and does crypto mining. All because of these kind of Trojans. Fortunately, these days, the latest antivirus would be able to easily catch these Trojans because of the techniques whatever we are going to discuss. Trojans are we can easily detect Trojans. Then we have key loggers. Today, we have different kinds of authentication to access our application. Can anybody give me different methods of authentication? And for the guys who are very new to the terminology authentication is proving yourself. Authorization is having permission. How do you prove yourself?
Biometric is there. Iris authentication is there.
Biometric, password. Anything else?
Typing in the text format, the credentials.
SIM passwords. Anything else? One is biometric, the physical attributes of you, and the second one is the logical things, what you remember. Again, authentication is of three formats: what you know, what you have, and what you are. Single factor, two factor, multi-factor authentication. Probably you might have heard about two-factor authentication or MFA, multi-factor authentication, and so on, right? Single factor authentication is what you know what you know. What you know is obviously your password, right? Back then, MFA, RBI bank has enforced this as a mandatory control for all the banks, the RBI guidelines, saying like every banking institute should enforce multi-factor authentication. This has been there since 2015. But before 2015, most of these banking applications, even today most of the other applications have only single factor authentication, which is what you know. And what you know is something what you type on your computer. And keylogger is an application that runs on your computer, which logs all the keys whatever you type, captures the keys, stores it, and then there is different modus operandi after this. Some keyloggers would immediately send this log to attacker. Some would collect the logs for almost a week. Once in a while, they would send these logs to the attacker. And then there are advanced keyloggers which hackers use. To categorize, keyloggers are of three formats: software-based keylogger, hardware-based keylogger, and Wi-Fi-based keyloggers. We will see a small demonstration of software-based keylogger today. How it works, what would be the code inside it, what it does, how it usually sends the logs to the other person. But hackers are a step ahead. They either use hardware-based keyloggers. In your lab systems, probably if you go to your lab, where do you have your lab CPUs placed? On the top of the table or beneath the table? And have you ever noticed how your keyboard got connected to the CPU? Probably once, maybe during the first session, but not every now and then, right? Hardware-based keyloggers are some devices which you could buy for $2,000-3,000. Comes as small as this particular Bluetooth. You can't even see that, it is so small. It's a very small device which acts as an interconnection device between your wired keyboard USB and the CPU. Once connected, what it does is it keeps on collecting all the logs in the storage memory within that particular device. And all I need to do is pay around $5,000 or $1,000 to your housekeeping guy, whoever goes to the accounts department, ask him to connect the USB to the keyboard, connect it back to the computer. And after a week, take it out, give it back to me. This is a sabotage. This has been a regular espionage that's been happening with most of the corporates. Physical hardware based, and unfortunately they are easily available in the market. Okay. All we need to do is be aware about such kind of keyloggers, and if there is only single factor authentication, that is what you know, we can easily steal all the credentials, username and passwords. But hackers are not even doing this. As I mentioned, they are a little bit ahead of this particular scenario. Rather, they are coming up with a Wi-Fi based keyloggers. These are like small chipsets. Guys who are interested in IoT probably could do some kind of small research on it. A small chipset that can be integrated to the keyboard, placed within the keyboard. And if I know the vendor, let us say you are using Dell, HP and other keyboards, I just need to replace that keyboard. Before that, I would pair my Bluetooth, my phone's Bluetooth with that particular chipset. So whenever I go near that particular keyboard, it would automatically transfer all the logs to my phone. With advanced, I'm cutting short the whole procedure over here, but hackers does that. What in our session we are going to do is we will observe a software-based keylogger, how it captures the logs, and what needs to be looked into whenever we perform malware analysis to such kind of stuff. Then there is the spyware. Spywares are very common, and as I was asking you earlier, is there any person over here who is not infected with the malware? If you want me to verify your system, the first place what I test is your browser. Because that is where I would be able to find lots of spyware or at least the plugins, add-on extensions or modified browsers that would capture your information. To put it in a simpler format, if you are aware about cookie, any idea about cookie?
Yes, sir.
What is a cookie?
It stores the data of what we.
Oh, sorry.
It stores the data, sir.
Stores the data of what and where?
Our credentials.
Stores credentials to where exactly it stores the data and on whose behalf?
Inside the browser.
Inside the browser and whose behalf?
The on or off.
Temporary text file,
JSON file.
JSON file, or latest browsers are DOM, document object model. It won't even use any format of file content. Instead, it would get stored within the browser's protected storage area, not in a file format. Back in old days, it used to be in a text file or probably the JSON file. These days they are a bit advanced. They get stored in the DOM. Whenever you get connected to a website, because HTTP is sessionless, stateless, it won't remember the state of the connection. It simply drops a cookie onto your machine, just asking you to save that and share that cookie whenever you are connecting back, so that I can understand when was last time you got connected, what is your browser type, when was the time you got connected, whether you have been authenticated or not, session information, everything will be stored within a cookie. But have you ever heard about a cookie by name evil cookie? A simple program. And just by running a regular website, I can drop an evil cookie onto your system, which never goes off. Even if you clear your cache, it would still stay in your document object model, which would still collect not just the cookie information related to that particular website, but all the session IDs. Document object module related content it collects and drops me back. Now that's a spyware, a malicious application which spies, collects your information. Most of them, what it does is it would collect your history, browsing history. That's the reason when you open a particular website or probably when you are browsing something, you automatically get an advertisement related to it. That is because the spyware that is collecting information in the background. Adware is another application where they also come up with an advertisements related to the spyware. But ransomware is a very common issue we have been facing. As I mentioned, even yesterday, one of the topmost news channel in AP Telangana got attacked by a ransomware attack. What is a ransomware and how exactly that affects your system?
It encrypts the data and the attacker will ask for the money to pay or something.
But for that to get into your system, that's a core point. From any malware analysis point of view, first we need to understand how that malware got into your environment. How do we get infected with a ransomware? I was giving you an example of WannaCry. The loss occurred because of WannaCry ransomware was around again somewhere between $20-30 million. What WannaCry does is it exploits eternal blue vulnerability on Windows operating system. That means if at all you are using vulnerable Windows operating system, you got connected to internet, it automatically hacks into your system, drops this program, and after that, whatever, as you mentioned, it encrypts. I assume at this point we know what encryption is all about. You know the difference between hashing, encryption, and encoding. Encryption is something which can be decrypted. We will be using some kind of algorithm to convert a regular data to encrypted cipher data, which cannot be reversed easily. So what ransomware does is, there are different variants. When the initial version of ransomware came into picture, it was only making modifications onto the boot sector. What is boot sector of Windows? Master boot record. How many of you have worked on with Linux operating system? What is the bootloader for Windows? Grub. Grub and Euler. There are two different kinds of bootloaders. Bootloader is something which tells where to find the kernel of the operating system. So the initial version of ransomware, what they used to do is write a program, small program within the grub which says your data is encrypted. Pay me this ransom, then only go and access. They will not point out to the kernel. That's the only modification they do. They won't encrypt your data, but they say that your operating system is encrypted. Pay me ransom so that I can allow you to access the data. So when you take out that hard disk as an external connected to a different device, you'll still be able to access the data. That was the old ransomware technique. Now the next upcoming WannaCry kind of ransomware, what they do is, they actually get into your system And in case you have worked on with any encryption software, something like BitLocker, and to encrypt a drive, it takes not less than 6 to 8 hours to encrypt a whole drive with multiple files. So what they do is they come up with the different formats. They encrypt each and every drive, and they wanted this to trigger at a particular time. Like the example I'm giving you, 700 systems got encrypted within a span of 1.5 days. All the 700 systems. So the triggering time, they don't want to waste much time, because as an IR, incident response team member, you would immediately isolate and at least cut down the impact, right? They don't want that to happen. And the latest version of ransomware, what they are doing is they are secure deleting the data. And when I say secure deleting the data, it is something like you can't even find it in the file system, recover it from NTFS or FAT32 or something like that. So recovery is not possible, and it is been totally encrypted. They charge you somewhere around 1 to 2 bitcoins per server, or with the yesterday's case, they are still negotiating with 300 USD per mission. So 700 into 300 is what they are actually negotiating to decrypt the data. Ransomware, primarily most of the ransomware that are there available in the market, they use AES 128-bit encryption, which is easy, faster to encrypt. But at the same time, to decrypt, if I have a supercomputer, probably I would take a day or two to decrypt one encrypted key with a supercomputer. So that's a primary reason they are using AES. But if you understand the logic behind it, when you see it from an hacker's perspective, for you to encrypt some data, what is that you need? I'll give you a simple text file, and if I ask you to encrypt, have you ever worked on with any program that encrypts a file by yourself? All you need is some DLLs, script DLLs, which are by default available with your operating system. So if you have an antivirus which detects execution of cryptographic related DLLs, you can easily prevent ransomware. All you need is detection. We can easily prevent the upcoming ransomware attack. That is what most of the EDRs does these days. EDR, for your understanding, endpoint detection and response, a little bit advanced version of your antivirus and anti-ransomwares. So ransomwares are the latest ones that have been happening in the market. And then we have fileless malware. There are n number of variants with fileless malware, but boot virus is one of the common example, but we'll give you over here, where without any files, they would just modify either the boot sector or the master boot record and then make you suffer or probably do not access your system. This is especially for the guys who favor Linux. Earlier we were mentioning Linux, there is no chance of we getting infected on a Linux. Rootkits are specially designed malware that runs as a startup program or a regular program on your Linux. These are like backdoors for your Linux operating systems. Rootkits can also act, or probably part of the rootkit also work as a Trojan. That means gives hacker a full control on your Linux machines. Very tough to detect, and they use heuristic detection to bypass. Heuristic detection can be bypassed. Botnet. Most of the time when I usually start talking about security and go to colleges like yours and say you need to secure your organization, you know what kind of answer I might expect from your dean or probably principal? If I say all your lab systems or the end user systems, they need to be protected, it's very important for you to have security. Selling security is a very tough thing. And if I do such kind of stuff and go to your head of the institute and say, you need to spend minimum amount to safeguard your data, the common answer I would receive is, I have no important data in my system. All we have is an empty system, a lab system, where my student would come, work, and after they leave, it goes to the original state. We are not even going to maintain the state of the system. We are going to revert it to the original state, so I'm just bothered about safeguarding the data. Is that what we say when we are supposed to take care of our home? Let us say I don't have a safe in my home, I don't have any important jewels or cash in my home. Can I leave my house door open, or can I have a house without a door? So that anybody can break into my privacy and get into the system. But let us assume from a hacker's perspective, let us keep the privacy aside, but from a hacker's perspective, if they hack into your environment where you have nothing important on your systems, what they do is they use your system as a zombie or an agent. Using your system, they will propagate their next attack, execute attack on some other target. Example, most of the, recently again, US hosted client application of ours received a notification mail from FBI saying like we started observing attacks on our public IPs. They provided the range of the IPs saying like you have been sending us a brute force attack on these IPs. And it was, even the client was unaware because their mission was used as a agent, zombie or botnet. Botnet is a network of robots or agents. Multiple systems like yours would be hacked. Attacker would be controlling it using a proxy environment, and he triggers alerts or sends particular program requests during specific times. Most of the latest spyware, ransomware, they would get executed because of this botnet. And usually based on the spyware, whatever the information that is identified, ads, advertisements would come into picture. But apart from all these things, there are a lot more other malware, and another one what we could talk about is scareware. Ever heard about this malware scareware? It goes with the name itself, scareware. It scares you. When you are browsing some particular websites, have you ever observed saying like you get a pattern? 122 virus found on your system. Click on this particular button to auto scan. You would click on it. It says scanning C drive, D drive. After a certain time, it says 1200 virus malware found on your system. Clean this, and then they say $1 or $2 to procure an antivirus, a particular software that you need to download, install, and clean. Scareware will only scare you. All they have is basic access to your file structure. Based on that, they demonstrate as if you are infected, even though there is no infection on your system. And once you say install the program, that's when they actually access your data, and they demand money for the antivirus which won't even work. They just scare you. That's what the scareware does. And there are a lot more other variants of malware, but today we are going to focus on three primary kinds. One, probably four. One would be keylogger, the second one would be backdoor, third one would be ransomware, and if time permits, scareware and other stuff. Goals of malware analysis. Now, let us say you are picking up your career as cybersecurity professional. One of the domain we have in cybersecurity is malware analysis. And there are two different stages in malware analysis. One, incident response. You need to identify the characteristic of the malware, remove it immediately, and safeguard the environment. That's one job role. The other job role is the tough one, where you would investigate, capture samples of that malware, investigate what has been happening in that particular program, come up with characteristics, behavior analysis, characteristic analysis, functional analysis, code analysis. There will be lots of other things. You would write a signature, and then you would submit it to OEM. Most of the OEMs like Microsoft, Symantec, IBM, Sophos, McAfee, ESET, or CrowdStrike, all these guys would pay heftily. Their minimum salary would be around 25-30 lakh rupees per annum, and it goes beyond that depending upon your capability on detecting this kind of malware. All you need to do is do a research on a program, write a report of its characters based on multiple methods. That is what we are going to discuss. Malware analysis, we have four methods: basic static, basic dynamic, advanced static, advanced dynamic. And once that signature is developed, you will be sharing it with the OEM, where in turn they will come up with a program, an update, which their antivirus will be able to catch it. Most of the time we will be working on APTs, that is advanced persistent threats, where there are no signatures at all, or you will be working on fully undetectables. Any idea on how many antivirus are there in the market? Antivirus softwares? Are you using any antivirus? Windows Defender. Any other antivirus? No antivirus. Only malware analysts will not be using antivirus. Yes, everything, people, we would recommend you to use antivirus. There are roughly around 71 antivirus in the market. right from K7 to SOFO, CSET and other stuff. Take down this domain name, the very important domain name, it is virustotal.com. If you have any program binary which you would like to verify, you could just drop the hash or the application there, and it scans with all the 70 plus antiviruses, 71 plus antivirus, and sees if any one of these has caught this as a malicious program. Most of the time, if at all you are a malware analyst, the program you are going to work will not get detected by any of this malware. Right? So malware analysis is art of dissecting malware, understand how it works, how it is identified, how to defeat or eliminate. To come up with all these characteristics. This is not for freshers who are especially starting your careers or might not know anything about packet analysis or exploitation or malicious code development. The basic bare minimum prerequisite for you to understand malware analysis is security first. Understand what is perimeter security, HIDS, NIDS, DLPs, EDRs, lots of security technologies, WAFs, load balancers, CDNs and other stuff. Then also understand different kinds of malware. That means you need to have hands-on experience working on the malware itself, not reversing it or analyzing it. Then packet analysis, you should understand each and every field. That is what is covered in your third year's networking. I think you have subject of computer networks, right? So that is what is covered, where you are supposed to understand different layers, especially SDNs, especially about monitoring or reviewing the packet at application layer and so on. And then exploiting basics, like because we are talking about exploit codes or malware bombs which automatically get executed on your system, you should also understand what is the shell code, how do you execute a shell code, or how buffer overflow or heap overflow would happen, how we could come up with a program that bypasses this. All these things are very much needed. What we are going to discuss today is next-gen tools that are used for basic static malware analysis, understanding malware kits, reverse engineering malware, and little bit. I'm not jumping into disassembler or decompilers today. We are just focusing on basic analysis part. And extracting malicious documents. Of course, I'm not also talking about malicious PDFs or docs for today's session because of the limitation of the lab. So most often, when performing malware analysis, you will only have the malware executable, which won't be human readable. If at all you have had access to any malware, most of the time that would be an executable. Have you ever tried opening an executable file in a notepad or notepad++? What can be seen in it?
Encrypted text.
Scrambled data, not unreadable format, it would be in unreadable format. Ever worked on with any compression softwares? If I have 10 GB of data, how do I compress it?
7-zip WinRAR.
7-zip, WinRAR. You might have worked on with this compression software, right? How exactly it works?
It relocates the address.
Relocates the address, probably removes the empty spaces where it understands there is no wastage, removes the metadata, unnecessary metadata, and compresses the data. Did you ever try compressing an executable file? Let us say I have 100 MB binary executable exe file. Can I compress that? What happens if I compress it using 7Z or WinRAR or any other application? Will it compress it? It will not. Binaries cannot be directly compressed, because if you compress it, even if one bit of that information is modified, then the program might not get executed in the same manner as usual. So what hackers usually do is they use specially designed applications like UPX to compress binaries. Okay. And one of the methods we use to detect compressed programs is use UPS detector. So one thing we are going to use is that. And the malware executables, so we would also try to read the text content of a binary, not by opening it with Notepad, but using additional tools. That is what we do.
Assembly language.
That is disassembly, deassemblers and other stuff. We are not going to do that today. But yes, that comes as a part of your advanced dynamic assignment analysis part, which we are not going to do, but we do have tools already, like disassemblers and so. But primarily when it comes to malware analysis, this is static analysis. Static analysis involves examining the malware without running it. That means, as I was giving an example of virus, virus infects your system only if you interact with it, like when you execute it. But if I am not executing it, I have the malware with me, but without executing it, if I start analyzing it, then it is called as static analysis. I won't be running the program at all, because I don't want to infect my own system. That is what is done in basic static or advanced static analysis. And then we have dynamic analysis, where we run this program and see what are all the changes that are made onto your system once this program gets executed. So we are going to run with basic static and basic dynamic analysis today. 4 types of analysis: basic static, basic dynamic, advanced static and advanced dynamic. With basic static analysis consists of examining the executable file without building the actual instructions. We don't even look into the instructions, we would not execute. And with basic dynamic, running the malware and observing its behavior on the system. When I say running the malware, how do I do that? Let us say I give you a program and I would ask you to perform this dynamic analysis. Where are we going to run it?
We will run the program, execute the program, and we will check the background, what has happened, how much memory it's taking.
Correct. So the first part that comes into picture whenever we talk about malware is the malware lab, malware analysis lab. Probably you guys might have been working with virtualization, VirtualBox, VMware or any other technology. No matter whatever you are using,